Olá, pessoal, tudo bem? Bom, meu nome é Ian, eu sou o diretor aqui da CI do Canadá e hoje nós estamos orgulhosamente apresentando mais uma edição do nosso webinar sobre imigração para o Canadá. É um assunto que, vocês sabem, é extremamente rico, muito demandado pelos brasileiros. Cada vez mais é um assunto que vem sido trazido pelos brasileiros, não só os brasileiros, mas sobretudo os brasileiros, a respeito de como é possível fazer uma imigração, como é possível você ir atrás de uma residência permanente para o Canadá, como é que é possível você se planejar para que isso aconteça de maneira adequada, de maneira correta, eficiente e planejada, né? E agora é dezembro, e naturalmente é a melhor época, se não, talvez realmente a mais propícia época para que você comece de fato a se planejar para 2021 e comece de fato a colocar em prática aquilo que você pretende, se é para imigrar para o Canadá, se é para se planejar para vir para cá e fazer o seu planejamento de maneira correta, tá? Nós daqui da CI Canada, junto com todas as lojas aí do Brasil, nós nos reunimos para trazer o Spousal, que é um dos nossos parceiros de imigração, né, da Immigrate, que ele é um consultor registrado aqui no Canadá, ele conhece técnica e juridicamente todas as regras de imigração em todas as províncias, Quebec inclusive, né, para passar uma geral, para dar aquela, vamos dizer, aquela passada geral de todo o sistema, desde o federal até os provinciais, para que vocês conheçam, para que vocês entendam de uma maneira bastante geral como funcionam os processos de imigração para o Canadá para a sua residência permanente, tá? Então, a ideia hoje é a gente começar o assunto, passar geral quais são os grandes processos, os grandes programas, e aí nós, a Rede CI, aqui, a gente da CI Canada aqui em Toronto, nós estamos absolutamente prontos a receber vocês e começar a trabalhar com esse projeto o quanto antes vocês acharem que é interessante, tá? O Bassel, ele só fala inglês, né? Ele é canadense, então ele vai ministrar toda esse webinar em inglês. Eu vou estar aqui para ler as perguntas, tanto em português como em inglês para ele, então não se preocupem, isso também acaba sendo um teste para vocês, porque língua, né, a parte de inglês ou francês, são absolutamente necessários e importantes para o seu processo de imigração também, tá? Vocês estão vendo pelo YouTube, então a qualquer momento podem colocar suas perguntas, nós vamos tender a deixar para o final todas as perguntas de uma maneira geral, mas já vão escrevendo aí as perguntas ao longo do texto, podem fazer, não tem problema, seja em português, seja em inglês, tanto faz, que a gente vai responder. Aliás, a parte principal para a gente sempre são as perguntas e respostas, para a gente ter a riqueza e responder aquilo que vocês querem, tá? Então é um prazer ter vocês aqui. Eu vou já agora conectar com o Bassel para que a gente comece essa apresentação e explore o assunto, que é bastante rico, tá? Hey, Bassel.
I got all of it.
You got it. You speak Portuguese already. Yeah, I know that. You're expert in Portuguese as well. So I introduce yourself. So if you want to introduce you again and go straight to the presentation, they're ready to go.
If you can just help me out, I'm going to share my screen, and as soon as you tell me we are good to go, then I can go ahead and start.
Okay, I think you are about to share your screen. Yeah, that's it.
Perfect.
It's
good.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and start. Thank you, Jan. My name is Basil. I'm the principal consultant here at Incubate. I've been doing this for a while, both in the U.S. and Canada. Actually, I used to live in Chicago before I moved to Toronto. So I've seen the difference between the immigration system in the U.S. versus in Canada. How more people are now starting to come to Canada more than the U.S. or even Australia, and the reasons why. So today we're going to cram up so much information in just 45 minutes. That will be able to cover these topics. And then the other half of the presentation, like Jan was saying, is we're going to do a Q&A. So I'll be able to answer all your questions, and then Jan will read them one by one, and we'll see how we can help you out. Before we'll also start, just so that you know who's presenting this information to you. What's more important than me is the licenses that we carry. Like also Jan was saying, we are licensed to practice immigration law all over Canada, also including Quebec. We have 2 different licenses that allow us to do that. So no matter what you're going to end up doing in terms of using a destination, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, whatever, we do have offices all over Canada, so we will be able to give you local support and the location that you're going to be selecting. It's also important for you to know that what I will present to you today, with the help of Jan and CI, is our flavor of how to do things. There's a million different ways to come to Canada, work and study and immigrate and all that. Based on our years of experience and the number of applications we filed, we're going to give you our own perception of, what's a good way to do this. And then, of course, there's no such thing as, one solution for everybody. You will be able to pick and choose whatever you prefer. In terms of our team, it's nice to know who's behind the scenes. They come from different backgrounds and different nationalities, and they're all now Canadians or permanent residents. But what they all have in common is actually interesting, is the same thing that you're trying to do, they're done it themselves, right? Most people in Canada, if you look at the statistics, most younger people under the age of, let's say, 50 or 40, they're mainly immigrants, people who are trying to do the same thing that you've done, study, work, immigrate or come as visitors and then change their mind and they want to stay longer. So it's important for you to know that maybe you don't have all the decisions today, or you don't know the right thing to do. And that's our job, is just to tell you, how you could potentially achieve these things. And it's also important then at the end of our conversation today, and as you end up working with us in CI, you have to make 2 separate decisions. These 2 decisions are related, but not really dependent on each other, meaning you can come to Canada to study, work, or just come as a visitor for a short-term stay, or you can have a goal of permanent residency or even citizenship. These 2, they can come one after the other. They can be run at the same time, or you can just pick one of them. So just remember that you have to make a decision about what is it that you're really trying to do long-term, and then put the little components into it, which today we're going to cover in the different programs there. Of course, before we start talking about, the fun stuff, let's talk about all the restrictions and COVID. We're almost at the end of it, but what does Canada look like nowadays in terms of travel restrictions? There are 5 categories: visitors, students, workers, permanent residents, Canadian permanent residents, and citizens. Well, permanent residents and citizens are always welcome to come as they please into the country. Nowadays, there are no more restrictions for that. Now let's talk about the 3 other categories. Let's talk about visitors. First of all, visitors, including those who want to study for less than 6 months, they don't have a study permit. You need to have a family member who is in Canada. The laws changed in October of 2020, where now any family member, regardless if this person is a student or a worker, if you have a person that you're related to here in Canada, that means you have a reason to come. Before, it used to be only limited to, if I have a Canadian citizen spouse, or I have a permanent resident spouse, that used to be it. But now there are little by little restrictions being removed, and more visitors are allowed to enter. We're expecting sometime by March, all these restrictions are going to be lifted. Students, welcome to come as you please as of October 28th. Now there are no more travel restrictions in terms of students. Same exact thing for workers, no more travel restrictions for workers, as long as you have your work permit and you've been living in Canada, or you got a job offer and you're coming with a work permit. Again, there are no more restrictions. So as you can see, the only category that still has a little bit of a question mark is visitors, or people who are on ETA status. So when it comes to permanent residency or immigration, what do you do? Where do you start? How do you even start thinking about it? Well, you need to think about it from the government's perspective. What is it that they're looking for? What is it that they're trying to attract? The government wants students and workers. They want those who are skilled professionals, those who have language proficiency and experience that they can come to Canada and work right away. Those who are business immigrants, though somebody who already worked in the past and then in their 40s, 50s, 60s, look, I'm not going to come and work. I'm going to open my own company, a small project. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm not really going to come to Canada to be employed. I'm actually going to come to Canada to create employment for others. Okay. Another way, or another category the government supports in terms of immigration is relationship-based sponsorship or immigration. So if you have a spouse, right, and we'll talk about that later, and you're married or you've been living together for 1 year and you want to sponsor each other and come to Canada through the spousal sponsorship program. And of course, later, the family reunification stream. If you want to sponsor your parents, you don't want to keep your mom and dad back home and you don't want to be separated from them, you want them to come with you as well. This is a program for it. And finally, the refugee or asylum status for those who have been prosecuted or they have well-founded fear because of their sexual orientation, religious beliefs, association to a different or a membership of a group, or whatever these reasons. So these are the main buckets or the main categories the government of Canada supports when it comes to immigration. Now, let's talk about the most common one, or where almost 70% of all immigrants come to Canada, which is skilled professionals. The idea behind it, and I'm going to take it again from the government's perspective, from what the government cares about the most, going down. First thing is first is they're going to ask you a very simple question. There are two primary languages in Canada, English and French. Do you speak one of these two languages in an advanced level, yes or no? If the answer is yes, they tell you, okay, continue with the other factors. If the answer is no, they're going to come back and say, okay, fine, you don't have one advanced language. Do you speak an intermediate level of the two primary languages of Canada? Again, if the answer is yes, continue with the other factors. If the answer is no, they call timeout. Say, listen, language is very important for me as a country. And if you don't speak my two languages, or at least one of them, then I need you to either come study in Canada, come and work in Canada, get a job offer from a Canadian employer, or I need you to go and move to a small province where the not too many immigrants go, and we are trying to increase the population in that area. There is no other magic formula that presents itself. This is it. That's what you need to prepare yourself for. And that's what we're going to be discussing for the rest of the time that we're going to be going over immigration and going over these things. So in terms of the receiving end, right? So the government entities you will work with, there's the federal government, there's something called provincial government or province level immigration, like a state level immigration. And then there's also the province of Quebec. They have their own immigration system. The common system that most people know is called express entry. So this is under the federal level. And then all these provinces or the provincial nominee programs are under this platform as well, which we will cover later. And then there is the Quebec system. It's called ARIMA. It's a copy of express entry, except it is for immigration applications in Quebec only if you speak French. So let's talk about the concept of express entry or immigration in general, the factors that you need to meet in order for you to become a good candidate for immigration. In the past, the government used to do first come, first serve. Whoever applies first gets serviced first. There used to be a very long line. People used to wait for many years until they get an answer. 2015, the government said, nope, no more line. Everybody sit down. And then we're going to create this dynamic system. It's an online system where it's not first come, first serve. It's whoever is more qualified will be selected first or will be invited to apply first. Processing time dropped dramatically, right? So instead of years, now you're only looking for months. And it's a nice digital process to apply. Now, the trick is to get invited to apply in order for you to continue the process. So how do you get invited? Well, the government created different factors. Let's talk about the most important 4 factors the government considers in order for you to get this big chunk of points and that will allow you to immigrate. So your language ability, your level of education, highest level of education, your work experience outside Canada, inside, it doesn't matter, and your age. These are the 4 most important things that the government cares about. Language proficiency, they said, look, English and French, I will give you a total 4 exams or 4 tests, pick and choose whatever you want. IELTS or CELPIP for English, TEF or TCF for French. Education, they tell you, look, we'll give you 5 different entities, work with these entities to equalize your education outside. So if you have a bachelor's in Brazil or a master's in Brazil, you have to equalize that to Canadian standards. So there's a process for that as well. Your work experience and getting your job reference letters to prove that you've been working for a number of years. And then finally, obviously, your age, which you can prove by your birth certificate or by your passport. These 4 factors will lead to a total number of score with maximum of 600 points. And the government said, right now, they're looking at people who have around 470 points. So 470 is the score that you should be looking for, okay? Now, as an example, if you only have an intermediate level of English, if you have a bachelor's degree, no master's, 3 years of experience, and you're 29, you're going to be around, 350. So you're under the selection point that the government looks for. Now, the score changes dynamically. Every 2 weeks, there's a new draw, a new selection, and we'll see all these points. But the thing is, there's something called statistics. If you look at every single draw that happened in the past year, you want to be in the range, and the range is 470. So how are you going to get to 470? Well, it's important for you to understand what 470 equals in the first place, right? So the equivalent, again, this is from the government's perspective. What 470 points mean is you need to have a very strong level of English or French. You need to have a master's degree. You need to have 3 years of work experience, and you need to be under the age of 30, right? And you need to have these 4 factors. You can't skip any of these 4 in order for you to get 470. So what if you come back and you say, well, I don't have a master's, or you know what, I'm over the age of 35, right? Or my English is upper intermediate or intermediate. What does that mean? I can't immigrate to Canada? Well, no, that doesn't mean that you can't come. It means you need to work harder in the other factors in order for you to become an immigrant. Let me give you an example. If you only have a bachelor's degree, a university degree, you don't have a master's, Canada says, okay, listen, do a 1-year diploma. So come to Canada, go to a public college, go to private college, do a 1-year post-grad diploma or post-secondary diploma, right? Or even if you have it back in Brazil, and a combination of a 1-year diploma plus a bachelor's degree together will give you the same effect as a master's degree when it comes to immigration, which is pretty cool. So now instead of you coming to Canada and spend, a lot of money and you need to put in a lot of effort to be accepted in a master's degree, if you go to a college in Canada, a combination of 1-year diploma plus whatever you did back home will give you the same results as a master's. And then now we're going to dig deeper into how these points come into play. But before we get into that, I want you to see what's been happening, right, since the past year. So this is every single draw that happened in the past year under the Federal Skilled Worker Program and Express Entry. And you look at the range, so the last 2 draws that happened in the past month were the lowest it's been since the entire year, so 469. So it's only 1 point under the average. Is the score going to go up or down? We don't know. We keep updating this and running statistics to see what's going on, but it has been stabilized in this range. What's interesting is there's another program called CEC, or the Canadian Experience Class. This means you came to Canada, you studied or you worked for 1 year, and then you became eligible with a Canadian work experience. Look at the scores here. They're around almost 50 points, right? Or 40 points lower than the federal skilled worker. So federal skilled worker is whenever your experience is outside from Brazil. Canadian experience class is if you have 1 year of experience in Canada. So if you come to Canada and you study or you work for 1 year, not only are you going to get more points from your Canadian experience, but the score you have to push yourself to achieve is much lower than the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which is pretty cool. Now, to let you know how important language is, because we're going to be talking a lot today about language. Look what happens if you are able to achieve something called CLB level 9 or Canadian Language Benchmark level 9. To make it easy for you, CLB 9 equals advanced English or advanced French. So if you have advanced English and you have 3 years of experience, work experience back in Brazil, the government is going to give you 50 extra bonus points. So if you are at 350, 360, suddenly you get to 400, 410. Same thing happens with your education. If you have a master's degree and advanced English, right? Or like we said, if you have a bachelor's degree and 1 year diploma and advanced English, the government gives you another 50 bonus points. So suddenly you can go from 350 or 360 to 460 simply by having advanced language proficiency. Now, not everybody is going to be able to do this. Not everybody is going to get this right score in the IELTS exam or the CELPIP exam. So I'll be covering other areas that will potentially give you points from a different perspective other than language. Now, just to define what work experience is outside Canada, continuous for 12 months, minimum 30 hours per week, and you need to be receiving a salary. So it cannot be an unpaid internship. Now, if you had a paid internship, that's totally fine. You can use that experience for immigration. As long as you receive the salary, it doesn't matter. Even if it was minimum wage, it makes no difference. Okay? In terms of money, how much money you need to have in order to apply for immigration, well, it all depends on your family size, right? If it's just you, you need to show around 13,000 Canadian dollars of savings. Now, this money you don't spend, right? You're not going to give this money to anybody else. You just tell the Canadian government, look, I have my savings in Brazil to show that if I come to Canada and I don't even have a job, right, and I immigrate, I will be able to use this money to support myself. The bigger your family size is, so let's say if you're married and you have 2 children, you need to show 24,000 Canadian dollars. Again, bank statements to show that the money's there. This money doesn't get spent or given to anybody else. How do you work in Canada? How are you able to get a work permit, or how can you get sponsored in Canada in order to be able to achieve work experience or the Canadian experience required for immigration? The most common thing that you hear about is something called Pgwp, or post-graduation work permit, after graduation work permit, which means if you go to school in Canada, and only specific schools are eligible for Pgwp, public colleges, right, or any college that you're going to go to in Quebec. But if you're staying outside of Quebec, you need to go to a public college to get a post-graduation work permit. Now, this is dependent on you studying in Canada. So you come to Canada, study for 1 year, 2 years, whatever, and after you graduate, you'll get a work permit for a maximum of 3 years, so 1, 2, or 3 years. That allows you to work full-time in any employer, because it's not dependent on an employer who sponsored you. It's connected to your education. You graduated, the government is going to give you a gift. There you go. Here's a work permit. Thank you for all your money. Similar to what happens in the UK, right? If you're married, if you have a spouse, right? If you have a common law partner with you, your spouse, while you're studying, and later on, while you have your post-graduation work permit, your spouse will get something called an open work permit. So again, Pgwp and OWP, these two are open. They're not restricted to one company, because you are not sponsored by a company. You've gone through an education stream. If you want to go through employment, or you want to go through sponsorship, that's called LMIA, or Labor Market Impact Assessment. This is where a company or an employer is going to sponsor you in order for you to come on a work permit and then work for that company, and only for that company. If you leave them, you won't be able to use your work permit, and you need to transfer it to another company. Otherwise, you won't be able to work anymore. There are some situations where you can get something called LMIA exemption, work permits, meaning because of certain things about me, and I'll give you a couple of examples today, that I will be able to get a work permit because of my nationality, because of my language, because of whatever it is, without a company sponsoring me. And I will be able to explain that in a minute. One of those exempted sponsorship work permits is called working holiday or young professionals, right? So for example, Brazil is supported by certain organizations that allow you to get a work permit. Now, we've been doing working holiday and young professionals for a very long time, right? But it comes with certain restrictions, which means you need to have a professional occupation. You need to have a very good job in order for you to use this work permit to apply for immigration. And the problem is, if you don't have any experience in Canada, if you've never been here, your language is still not strong, you know, and you get a work permit and you don't know what to do with it, then you might just lose the benefits you get out of this work permit. And that's why a lot of people, they prefer to go study in Canada first, to integrate, learn, meet employers, do internships and all that. And after they graduate, they have done a co-op, they've done something, they'll be able then to use their work permit after they graduate in order to get work experience and apply for immigration. LMIA, just to let you know how it works, the employer sponsorship is not something you do, it's something that the company would do. You apply for a job, a company wants to give you a job offer in Canada, they go on, they work with the labor office, we call it ESDC. They go through this procedure to say, yes, I'm going to hire a foreign national instead of hiring a Canadian. I will show proof that I advertised this job and no Canadians applied, or there are no good Canadians to take this job. So I'm going to give this job to somebody, for an example, from Brazil. So this is the procedure for sponsorship that a company will go through that wants to offer you employment. You don't do this yourself, the company would. All these things, study, work, sponsorship, all these things, for immigration, what you're trying to get out of it is points. So how many points are you getting out of all this? Well, if you come and work in Canada, you'll get around 40 to 60 points extra on top of everything else. If you come and study in Canada, you're going to get around 15 to 30 points, depending on the school level that you're going to go to. If you get a sponsorship of an LMIA, you're going to get 50 points. And then if you're going to go through something called PNP, the Provincial Nominee Program, you're going to get 600 points. This is not a typo, right? A lot of people say, but why do I need 600 points? I already have, let's say, 400. Now I just need 70. Why do I want to go and get 600? I just want you to think about it this way. 600 means it's a guarantee from this province or the state to say, we for sure want this person to get an invitation to apply. We want this person to skip the line. So here's the maximum number of points that this person needs in order to receive an invitation to apply. That's all that it needs. Now, French. And then again, we're not talking about Quebec. We're not talking about the French, primary French provinces. We're talking about all of Canada, minus Quebec. What's happening is the federal government, they have this mandate to support people who speak English and French, right? Bilingual applicants who have the two primary languages. And they're starting to launch every single day new programs to support those who speak these two primary languages. And we're not even talking about advanced French. We're talking about sometimes intermediate, sometimes upper intermediate. So this is one of the things that are becoming right now shortcuts for immigration. And I will show you 5 different examples of what you can do with your French and how you can benefit from it. First thing is first, just around 6 weeks ago, the government announced that if you speak upper intermediate French, or they call it B2, CLB level 7, plus you speak intermediate level of English, B1, a combination of these two will give you 50 bonus points in the express entry system. Now, I need you to understand this. 50 points is the same level or the same amount of points you will get if you come to Canada. You get sponsored by a company. You get the labor market impact assessment approved. You get a work permit for that company. This whole entire sponsorship process is worth 50 points. And if you spend 6 months or 9 months learning French and another 3-4 months learning English, you get the exact same number of points. Now, I'm not saying this one is easier than this. I'm just saying here, you need to have a company to sponsor you. Here, you just need to be a good student, or you need to be able to teach yourself discipline to say, listen, I'm going to get this done. I'm giving myself 1 year. I'm going to do this. And if you do, you get these 50 points. Okay. Another really cool thing that happens also with French, which a lot of people now, they're starting to use this, is your exemption from Lmia. So remember when I was saying sponsorship by a company, well, guess what? If you speak B2 in French or upper intermediate level of French, you actually don't need to be sponsored by a company. Simply using your French with a job offer in Canada, no sponsorship from the company, no Lmia, you actually can get a work permit just because you speak French and you have a job offer like any other Canadian would get without really needing an employer to sponsor you. Now, this is a great opportunity, right? Many people are starting to benefit from this because the requirements are super easy. Just speak French and have a job offer. Thank you, employer. I'll get my work permit on my own. I'll be right back. 6 weeks later, you're able to work without any sponsorship, right? So this is a really cool thing about getting a work permit through your French. Now, the benefits when it comes to immigration, and let's say the 50 points from express entry that I mentioned to you, the bonus that they just announced, is not enough for you. Well, then you need to go after the provinces. You need to go after the state level or the province level immigration. So check this out. These programs, technically, they don't require any Canadian experience. You don't even have to have a job offer. You don't even need to come and study in Canada. You just need to have language, right? And if you do so, you'll get the 600 points that we talked about. But how does it go? I'm going to give you, there's dozens of them. I will give you just 3 examples. Ontario, I'll also give you Saskatchewan, and I'll give you New Brunswick. And you will see the similarities between these 3 programs. All of them, they're attracting those who speak English and French. All of them are reducing the requirements in order for you to get selected in one of these provincial programs. So this is, for an example, how Ontario works. They say, look, if you have a minimum of 1 year of experience, you have intermediate English, upper intermediate French, you have a bachelor's degree, and your total CRS score, your express entry score, is around 420 to 450, we will allow you to get an invitation to apply. They call it notification of interest, and you will be able to come in and apply through this province, and then you get 600 points, and you continue the procedure. And if you look at the requirements, really, it's not as hectic as what we said when we said we want to go after 470 points, masters under the age of 30, perfect English, or perfect French, and 3 years of experience. Here, you see that they started reducing the requirements and even the total score. Now, Ontario is one of the toughest provinces, right? Just because there's a lot of demand in this province. Now, as we go through other programs similar to this, you'll see even more relaxed requirements. Now, when it comes to the draws in Ontario, this is where the number I was mentioning comes from, the 420 to 450. If you notice, these are the scores that are being selected in the past 4 draws. It's interesting. Last year, there was not even a minimum score. If your score in the system was 300 points, as long as you have 1 year of experience, bachelor's degree, half English and half French, you're good to go for immigration, right? And of course, because of the pandemic, they started adding a few points here and there. Copy of the program in Ontario, the one in Saskatchewan, again, attracting those who speak English and French. But now this one's a bit more, it's a bit easier. Again, bachelor's degree, 1 year of experience in a specific occupation, half English and half French. And then you need to get 60 out of one, like the score in Saskatchewan is a bit different than other provinces. You need to have a minimum of 60 points, but the selection, the really good candidates are in 68 to 74. Again, if you look here at the draws, right, every single month, or sometimes there's more than 1 draw per month, and you look at the minimum score, it ranges between 60, 68-ish to around 74. So if you calculate your score in Saskatchewan, and if you're going to be in this range, and you speak half English, half French, bachelor's degree, and 1 year of experience, you could potentially go through this provincial program exactly like Ontario. Okay. Another example, copy of it in New Brunswick, and this one is brand new, fresh, hot out of the kitchen, not even 10 days old or 2 weeks old. Again, if you speak, actually in Brunswick, you don't even need to speak English. If you just have upper intermediate French or CLB 7 in French, if you're under the age of 45, if you have 3 years of experience and a bachelor's degree, right, there isn't even a minimum draw selection. The range idea, because this is a new program, it doesn't exist. You just need to get 65 points out of 100. And if you do based on these requirements, you're good to go, right? So the point is, French has become a very strong tool for immigration that makes you skip a lot of lines. But a lot of people come back and say, I don't want to do French. Forget it. Why are you forcing me to do French? Well, I'm not, right? I'm explaining things to you from the government's perspective, not my perspective. And the government want people who speak English and French. But if you still don't want to do French, and if you just want to focus only in English, a lot of people ask us, well, what about the other options that are available to me when it comes to the provinces? Look, it's very simple. If you're not going to speak the language that the government wants you to at the level that they want you to, you're either going to have to come study in Canada, work in Canada, right? Or both. Or you're going to have to move to a small place where the government is trying to move immigrants to. And for this to make sense to you, I'm going to give you an example of one of the programs, one of the provincial programs in New Brunswick, right? So we talked about the French speaking skilled worker program in New Brunswick. But look at this. They have something called the express entry stream for skilled workers, right? So that's the second column, not the entrepreneur one, the New Brunswick express entry. Now, if you look at this, oh, look, the minimum requirements are 67 points out of my 100, this and that, and all that. But what's really cool about it is the following. You either need to be in New Brunswick, and you got a job offer from a company there, and you can apply through this program. And if it's not, if you actually physically go to New Brunswick and register, be enrolled in a public college. So let's say you get enrolled for a 1-year public college in New Brunswick. If you're physically there, you have a valid study permit, and you haven't even graduated from the college, you just got enrolled in it, and you only need to have CLB 7 in English. So this is in the intermediate level of English, no French. Then you'll be able to apply through this program, which is, again, it's pretty cool, right? If you're thinking about taking the study route. If you don't want to take the study route, that means you need to get a job offer. If you're not going to get a job offer because of the pandemic and all that fun stuff, then you need to push on your French and your English and go through the other programs that we talked about. Time-wise, right, time frame-wise, if you're going to go through all these different programs, you need to prepare yourself, right, for all these different things. It takes you 3 months, 6 months. Every person is different. You always start with express entry, make yourself visible. It's like submitting a resume to the government, and then it's up to you. If you have your 470 points and you're good to go, they go directly into the PR application or the immigration application and proceed. If not, you take a stop, you apply for one of those PNP or the provincial nominee programs, get invited by them, apply, continue, and then you go to the PR stream. So if you end up being an excellent candidate who doesn't need PNP, processing time nowadays is going to be around 1 year. If you add PNP to the mix, you're looking at around 1.5 to 2 years, based on the province, based on the speed of preparation you're going to go through. When it comes to, let's say, your backup plans, listen, what's my strategy? What am I doing here? I'm going to go with my plan A, my English, my master's, or my bachelor's +1 diploma, and then I'm going to get my 470, get my PR status or immigration status. Nope, didn't work. What's my plan B? Okay, now I'm going to add French to my English. I don't have to go through advanced level of language. I'm going to just do half and half. I'll get my 50 points extra in express entry and I'll go through my PR. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, what's my plan C? Okay, my plan C is I'm going to go through one of these, PMP programs. My English and French, my job offer, or the fact that I went to a public college, right? Except it has to be maybe a smaller province because they have easier regulations. I'll get my 600 points and continue with my PR. None of this happens. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. What's my plan D? Well, I'm going to use my exemption code C16 from Lmia. So I'm going to use my English and French to come and work in Canada first, use my Canadian experience, and then apply for immigration. So technically, you're not applying for immigration in the beginning, you're applying for a permit. That's why if you remember in the beginning, I was talking about temporary resident status. So your initial plan for the first 2 years is study or work. Then after that, you'll be able to apply for immigration after you arrive in Canada and after you complete your Canadian experience. Okay. And again, there's a million different ways to do this. I'm just giving you different ideas to think about, but the factors are always the same. Language comes in first, then studying in Canada, then working in Canada, then getting a job offer from an employer, or moving to another province or a smaller place that the government wants to support. Those of you who want to go to Quebec, you can't use express entry, right? So express entry is for those who want to stay outside Toronto, Vancouver, Alberta, any of those provinces, but not Quebec. If you want to go through Quebec, you have to use a system called ARIMA, okay? ARIMA is a copy of express entry for those who want to go to Quebec. Now, the principle behind the Quebec Skilled Worker Program through ARIMA, right, is the fact that you need to have advanced French. French has to be your primary. You can't use your English to immigrate to Quebec. It must be super advanced French, okay? There are draws, just like how express entry is. It's not as frequent, but they do it. Same procedure. You calculate your points, see how things go if you have French. If you manage to get a work permit and you come and work in Quebec, there's something called PEC or PEQ, right? So if you have upper intermediate French and you have 24 months or 2 years of work experience in Quebec, you can apply for a CSQ and go through the PEC program and apply for immigration. If you're not going to work, if you're going to go through your studies, right? If you're going to go to a 2-year diploma, or they call it 1,800 hours diploma in a public college in Quebec, or you're going to do your master's or your PhD, let's say, there's another program for you, again, under PEC, but it's not about, it's not through the Quebec's work experience, it's through the Quebec International Student Graduate Program. So there are two different streams in Quebec. So there's PEQ and there's ARIMA. They're very good programs, but most people end up going through the PEC program instead of ARIMA because ARIMA is a little bit more difficult and they require C1 or C2 in French versus PEQ requires only B2. So it's only an upper intermediate French. Spousal sponsorship. So this is becoming one of the most common programs amongst, I want to say, international students who come to Canada or people who just have relationships with Canadian citizens or Canadian permanent residents. A lot of people just come as students on their own, and they meet somebody and that relationship progresses, and then they want to use that relationship to apply for immigration. That's called spousal sponsorship. This could be started from inside Canada, from outside Canada. Both people are in the same place or they're separated. It doesn't really matter. Canada respects different kind of relationships, not just legal marriage. And we're going to go through this right now. So the cool thing about it is under spousal sponsorship, you don't have to really prove anything like you do with Express Entry or the Federal Skilled Worker Program. There's no language requirement. There's no education or work experience requirements. You simply need to say, look, I have a genuine relationship. I have a real relationship with somebody. And the type of relationships you can consider, obviously, legal marriage. Doesn't matter if you're married inside or outside Canada, as long as it's a legal marriage. And if you're not legally married, Canada also considers something called common law partners. So common law partners are two people who lived in the same physical place for 12 months, and they're dependent on each other, even though they're not married. Canada considers that under the common law stream. And then there's something called conjugal partners. Even if physically two people did not live together, but they were so dependent on each other, like a real couple, and they can prove it, that they were financially supporting each other, they were emotionally supporting each other, that also could be considered under spousal sponsorship, even if these two people did not physically live together. So different kind of options. It is pretty cool. We do a lot of spousal sponsorships. You do cut the line with a lot of things. But again, you can't say, I'm going to come to Canada and meet somebody and I'm going to use my relationship for immigration. It has to be genuine, right? You just naturally met somebody and then you would like to sponsor each other. Inside, outside Canada, like I said, doesn't really matter where the relationship is. There are different ways to start the application process. Processing time is around 12 months. Mom and dad, if you're planning to bring them with you, initially, when you apply for immigration, you only apply for yourself and your spouse and your children, right? So as one package, you come together. But you can't really bring your parents with you in the beginning, right? You have to sponsor them after you become a permanent resident. So once you come to Canada, once you stabilize yourself, then you want to sponsor your parents, right? There is 2 procedures for it. Canada really likes family reunification, so they don't tell you wait until you become a citizen and then apply for your parents. No, they say, look, come to Canada. If you come to Canada and you work just for 1 year, we will give you this privilege called super visa. Super visa means my mom and my dad, they can come and they stay with me for 2 years without even leaving, right? And they can stay with me as I continue my plan. So I become a permanent resident. I file my taxes for 1 year. Mom and dad, they come and stay with me. And then after that, I continue my journey for 2 more years. So total 3 years of taxes. And then you can sponsor your parents under the Pgwp, or the Parents and Grandparents Program. Really cool program. It's nice. You don't have to be separated from your family for a long time. You can bring them with you in around 1 year after you immigrate to Canada. Those of you who are thinking to stay long-term, right? I would like to maintain my permanent residency for 10, 20 years, or if I would like to become a citizen, right? There are 2 different things. If you want to become a citizen, you have to live in Canada for 1,095 days. So it's usually, we don't say 3 years because it's not continuous, right? You can travel, go back and forth until you finish your 1,095 days. Then you can apply for your citizenship. And any time that you spend in Canada, even if you came as a student or as a worker, some of that time will be able to be counted towards your citizenship. You have 0 interest in becoming a citizen and you just want to maintain your PR status, then you don't need to stay for 1,095 days. You only need to stay for 730 days. Again, we don't say 2 years because it's not really continuous, right? You just need to collect 730 days. And if you do that, they'll give you a PR card for 5 years, then another 5 years, and so on and so forth. If you don't want to ever get your passport, you just need to spend in Canada 2 out of 5 years. If you want to get your passport, upgrade it to 3, and life is good. So this is really one of the fastest pathways to immigration. In the US, it takes you almost 11 years to get your US passport. You know, you need to go study for 4 years, then you need to get your H-1B, which is the employer sponsorship, for 6 years, and then your employer petitions for you, then you get your green card, then 5 years on your green card, then apply for your passport. It's literally around 11 years to get your passport, versus in Canada, you're looking at 3. This one doesn't really apply to you guys. It's if you already had in the past applied for immigration status in Canada and you lost it, or your parents applied but you left, you didn't stay. There's a procedure that we go through in order for you to maybe get your PR status back. Otherwise, you have to voluntarily renounce it and then apply all over again. It is an option that requires a hearing in Canada, but it's not that easy. And again, it's case to case, we'll be able to evaluate. Okay, so all in all, what do you do? I mean, I rushed through so many things today because there's a lot you need to know, but you just have now snapshots about these different things, and you need to apply it to your case. So the next step that needs to happen is you need to simulate your own plan, or simulate your own case. We call it the what if scenario. What if, and then fill in the blank, maybe 10 or 15 different avenues or procedures that you can go through. And once you identify the final plan that makes sense to you based on your own personal abilities, then you can go ahead and start spending money on the actual plan that you want to implement. Work, study, move to a small province. Do I do this? Do I do that? What if I'm married? Should my spouse study and I work? No, you know what? Forget this. We'll come as visitors. Then I'm going to change my status. How am I going to get sponsored? All these things are different scenarios. For that, if you know how to do things on your own, great. Do your own research. Be smart about what you want to do. Whoever attended this webinar today really cares about information, didn't fall asleep halfway through the presentation or was taking notes. Otherwise, you're going to start losing money, right? So if you would like people like us to do this for you, sure, we can give you a whole entire immigration plan and give you a consultation. You pay us $250. We spend 90 minutes with you over the phone. We walk you through these things. We give you information. We do legal research on your behalf. The outcome of this is for us to give you a plan, right? So you're not really spending money on an application. You're spending money on a plan for somebody to go through all your questions and let you know what you need to do before you even step a foot in Canada. And that's why we're even doing this with CI, is because CI cares about its own clients. So for them not to sell you something you don't need or advise you to take a specific program that maybe doesn't really meet your requirements, they work with people like us to say, hey, listen, you guys are immigration consultants. Give this plan to my clients and inform them what they need to do before things get complicated when people start spending money on things they don't need. And for us, okay, great. So you respected our time. You paid us this money for us to do this for you. And we always say, look, if you come back to us in the future and you do apply for immigration, the money you gave us for the consultation, we give it back to you as credit towards a full permanent residency retainer. We do this just because we would love to give free advice to everybody and spend hours letting people know what they need to do. But hey, somebody needs to pay salaries in our company. So we do charge this minimal fee. And like I said, if you ever work with us in the future, we give it back to you as credit. How do you do it? You talk to CI, you talk to us. We're one big happy family. You go to our website, you click on schedule a consultation. You get a list of all our consultants that we have. You pick and choose the one you want. English, Portuguese, and any different language. You want to speak to somebody in Spanish, go for it. You pick your favorite one, schedule the appointment, confirm the date and time, and we go through the consultation. This is not mandatory for everybody. This is what I would advise you to do. You know, I wish somebody gave me this advice, 30 years ago when I was doing my immigration procedures. But, again, some people like it, some people that don't. It's up to you. Jan, I finished in less than 1 hour. This is an accomplishment, you must admit.
Absolutely, Basil. I think you made it. You can make it.
I can drink my water now.
Yeah, you can do it, and it was a very massive amount of information, and still,
yes, it was.
Yeah, and I'm going to put it in a nutshell for them, just to put it in Portuguese, and then we can move on to the questions. Okay.
You got it.
If you can mute your microphone, so I can just call you back. Okay.
Sure.
Bom, pessoal, como o Basil falou, foram muitas informações, tá? Como a gente tinha falado também no começo, são informações muito importantes. Mas para a gente sintetizar bem rapidamente, de uma maneira bastante simplista, tá? A gente viu como é importante para o processo de imigração, para a aplicação da imigração, a questão da língua. Aí nós estamos falando tanto inglês como francês. A questão da educação, do nível de educação que você tem, seja aí no Brasil ou seja fazendo aqui no Canadá, e como os componentes de educação conseguem se somar e te dar mais pontos, como a experiência de trabalho, seja aí no Brasil e aqui no Canadá, também são importantes para a sua pontuação, né? E também, que nem importante, de maneira muito importante também, a questão da idade, né? O fator de idade aí é inversamente ligado. Quanto menor a sua idade, abaixo dos 29 anos ou menos, né, te dão muito mais pontuação, e a partir dos 30 anos isso começa a decrescer. Como o Basil passou, existem uma série de possibilidades de vocês, vamos dizer, combinarem as opções, fazerem percursos ou caminhos que são específicos para o seu perfil e para os seus objetivos. Você tem estratégias diferentes que você pode usar. Olha, eu posso ir pelo caminho da língua, né, implementando bem questão meu conhecimento de língua. Posso ir pelo francês, que vocês viram que tem opções em algumas províncias que te dão pontuações muito pesadas. Você pode ir atrás do job offer. Você pode ir atrás da componente de estudo aqui no Canadá, junto com o trabalho também. Você pode ir atrás do Lmia, que são os sponsorships de empresas para ajudar vocês no processo. Você pode também ter o Spousal sponsorship também, que pode ser uma alternativa, mas aí depende de você ter relacionamento com um canadense ou não. Enfim, são uma série de caminhos, né? Uma série de possibilidades que realmente a gente tentou, né? O Bassel até conseguiu ser bem rápido dessa vez, para trazer de uma maneira bastante sintetizada e ampla para que vocês saibam, tá? Bassel, I'm gonna start reading the questions right now, so I'm gonna start off in Portuguese and then I ask you in English, okay? You just unmuted yourself. You're muted.
I just noticed that. I'm like, oh, I'm just talking to myself, aren't I?
Okay, I'm going to go through the questions right now, okay?
Sure.
Bom, pessoal, vamos ver as perguntas aqui. Se vocês quiserem fazer mais perguntas, tá? Fiquem à vontade, usem esse espaço aqui do YouTube para fazer. Pode fazer em português mesmo ou em inglês, como vocês preferirem. Eu vou fazer essas perguntas para o Bassel diretamente, tá? Bassel, the first one is you explained that already, but
Yeah.
Orlando asked if it's necessary to only use Portuguese as the language of entrance or to be eligible for immigration, or it requires English or French.
Right. So the two primary languages, right, in Canada, and I'll go back to the slide that talks about the factors. Right? So you notice in this slide, it says English or French, right? I would love if the government will just give more points for Portuguese or Spanish or Arabic or any other language. The two primary languages is English and French. It has to be one of these two languages. Not both, it's up to you. You want to do, like I said, half English, half French, or just English or just French.
Ok, Orlando, você viu que realmente o português para efeito de imigração não te dá pontos, mas basicamente inglês ou francês ou ambos, como a gente viu, aliás, ambos acabam te alavancando muito mais. Bassel, a Valkyria aqui pergunta se existe um limite de idade para fazer imigração. Valkyria asks us about, is there any age cap that limits you to immigrate to Canada?
So, federal, so remember, express entry, you can't be 1 day over 30, right? It's maximum 29. And then you start losing 5 to 6 points every year as you age. So if you're like me, I'm 42, I'm invisible when it comes to immigration. But again, this is on a federal level, right? If you notice, the example that I gave you, I think it was for Brunswick. In Brunswick, it's up to 45, right? So if it's too hard for you to immigrate through the federal skilled worker program or the express entry program because of the age factor, you can then look at the provincial level immigrations because the language, the age goes higher and higher and higher, and you have more privileges, or it's easier for you to immigrate on a provincial level.
Ok, cool. I'm going to translate that.
Sure.
Bom, não existe necessariamente, Valkyria, uma limitação de idade. O que vai acontecer, você não é bloqueado para emigrar em nenhuma circunstância. A única questão é que quanto maior a sua idade, para o Express Entry, você realmente acaba perdendo muitos pontos, você vai ter que compensar em algum outro aspecto de trabalho, estudo, job offer, ou o que quer que seja, né? Porém, você tem os caminhos ligados aos provinciais, né? Os caminhos provinciais que aí sim podem te dar vantagens ou não limitações para questões de idade e facilitar a tua vida para isso. Então, existem opções quando a questão é de idade também. Nós temos uma outra pergunta aqui do Ricardo, que ele pergunta aqui já em inglês. Existe um caminho tradicional para alguém por volta de 25 anos que está pensando em imigrar, começar como um estudante de línguas? Bassel, Ricardo asks you about what is the traditional pathway? How to start your immigration process? Being someone that's around 25 years old, what is the kickstart? Well, how can he start doing that? Is it by language learning?
So in the past, bro, right before COVID, before pandemic, or the travel restrictions, I'd always say, pack your bags and come. It doesn't matter how. Come as a student, come as a work. It doesn't matter. Come as a visitor and make up your mind here, right? And then you start preparing yourself here. Now, because the world has gone virtual, right? You can prepare yourself before you even come to Canada. So even right now, if you want to apply for a visa tomorrow morning, it's going to take you, for the simplest visa, 6 months for it to be approved because of the delays in processing and all that. So what do you do for the next 6 months? The single most important factor for immigration is language. So to answer your question, start with language. Do online courses, right? Every single language school in Canada nowadays, they offer online programs. So take English, take French, take all these things, prepare yourself. And once you're ready, you get yourself to a certain level in English and French, and then you can go ahead and think about what the next step is. Whether it is you're going to come and study in Canada at a public school, or you already met the minimum requirements, apply for immigration through your language and in your experience in Brazil. But if you don't have 3 years of experience, you still need to maintain the idea that I need to reach a certain number of years of experience. You have to make a decision. Do I get my work experience in Brazil, or am I planning to come to Canada and get a job? And for you to get a job in Canada, you have to have language. So my advice to you is, where do you start from? English and French. And you speak Portuguese, meaning it's easier for you to learn French because it's the same Latin characters. So don't shy away. I showed you what you can do. 50 points with your French, right? So don't just say only English and laugh at French. Trust me. You will, I don't want to say you'll regret it. You're going to have to work so much harder if you don't do the two languages.
That's cool. O que o Bastão mencionou é o seguinte: o começo é, obviamente, começar com linguagem, estudar inglês ou francês, né? Porque são os itens mais básicos e que vão te definir, ou pelo menos determinar o que você vai precisar fazer depois, se você precisar fazer qualquer questão, né? A partir do inglês é fundamental, é a língua básica, então realmente faz muito sentido, mas se você for para o francês, como ele mencionou antes em algumas alternativas, a somatória do francês junto com o inglês vai te dar uma alavancagem sensacional, então pode ser um caminho interessantíssimo para a imigração, né? Principalmente que nós brasileiros falamos português e o francês acaba sendo muito similar ao que a gente conversa, então a facilidade, ou pelo menos a evolução do estudar dessa língua acaba sendo mais rápido para a gente e facilita isso como uma questão. Tem uma outra pergunta aqui da Camila, que ela pergunta o seguinte: de todos os fatores que dão pontos, quais seriam, qual ou quais deles dariam mais peso? Basil, I think you already answered this question, but Camila is asking, of all the factors that provide scoring or points for your application, which one has more weight among them?
Language. No questions asked. Look at this.
Yeah.
50 points, right? Up to 100 points of bonus. If you come to Canada and you spend $200,000 on your PhD, the government is going to give you 5 points. Okay. 50, guys, 100 points just for language. If you go, there is something called a CRS calculator. When we do your consultation, we will show you how your score can go literally like from 430, and then out of nowhere, it just jumps 120 points just by language, nothing else, right? So 100% English and French, you focus on these. This is the single most important factor.
Bom, ele mencionou, simplesmente ratificou, a língua acaba sendo o principal fator, que como ele mencionou, às vezes uma pós-graduação, um master, um doutorado, simplesmente por questão de língua, quando você alavanca, isso acaba dando mais pontos também. Então a resposta é comecem por língua que isso de fato vai te dar uma boa alavancagem.
Jan, I think I'd like to add something to that question for her to know one thing as well, and this is also important for you whenever it comes to processing the visas. Now, Canada, unlike Australia, a lot of people say, fine, I'm good to go. I'm going to come to Canada for 1 year and study just language. Just remember one thing, if you're going to come and study a language in Canada, you can't work. You can only study. If you want to study and you want to work at the same time, you either need to get a work permit or you need to go to school. So that's why a lot of students, well, not students, a lot of people who want to immigrate, they only want to come to improve their English and French, but they can't work. So they need to financially support themselves. That's why they have to go to college, not because sometimes they need it, just because they need to have access to a work permit and co-op and Pgwp later while they're improving their language.
Yeah, you're right. Bom, o que o Boston mencionou é o seguinte, também tem uma questão que ele aponta, por isso que acaba a língua, né, estudar a língua acaba ficando para um segundo momento, porque estudar no Canadá apenas inglês ou francês não te dá uma credencial de trabalho, né? Então, você precisa, para você conseguir trabalhar aqui no Canadá, você precisa ou ter um work permit, né, uma permissão de trabalho para uma empresa que te dê, etc., pelos fatores que o Boston mencionou, ou você vem através de um college a partir de 6 meses. Então, um dos caminhos que tem sido cada vez mais populares e mais, vamos dizer assim, feitos pelos estudantes que querem, ou qualquer um que vem para imigrar, é fazendo isso através de um college, mas também fazendo a questão, ajudando a questão de língua também. Let's move on here. Para equivaler ao Master, tem que ter Postgraduate Diploma ou pode ser qualquer diploma, como, por exemplo, o diploma de 2 anos, área diferente da formação? O Igor pergunta. Basil, Igor asks us about to be equivalent to the score of a master program that you mentioned initially, it has to be like a bachelor's program with a postgraduate diploma, or whatever diploma you attend works as the same way?
2 at the same. So you have to have a bachelor's. You have to have a university degree. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it doesn't matter. So a university degree that when it gets equalized, it's a bachelor's degree plus a minimum of 1 year diploma. These two together will give you the same effects as a master.
So, it might be both an undergraduate diploma in a college or a postgraduate diploma, whatever, as long as it's
post-secondary.
Post-secondary, yeah.
So I know in Brazil, you only get postgraduate. In Canada, there is postgraduate and there's post-secondary. Post-secondary, right. Postgraduate, it's just 1 year diploma. It doesn't really matter.
And whatever field of education it might be, if I am a law student in Brazil and then I come here to do business 1 year, it works.
Sometimes, I graduated with an engineering degree in Brazil, and now I don't want to come and work as an engineer. I want to do project management. So I come to Canada, do a 1 year diploma as a project manager, then I'll get my work permit, get work experience as a project manager, and then I apply for immigration.
Great. Igor, ele mencionou o seguinte, basicamente, se você tem um bacharelado no Brasil de 3 ou 4 anos, equivalente aqui no Canadá, um diploma de 1 ano de qualquer área, pós-graduação ou pós-secundário, como existem os colleges aqui no Canadá, funcionam para te dar essa pontuação equivalente a Masters. Tá? Valeu, Ricardo, você curtiu aqui, bacana. Qualquer pergunta, manda para a gente. O Lucas Boechat pergunta, fiz o intercâmbio para Vancouver e fiquei apenas 2 meses e não 1 ano. Conta ainda como experiência para pontuar ou não vale de nada? E ainda estou em formação do bacharelado. Tenho que terminar? Boa pergunta, Lucas. Basil, this is a very interesting question.
Yes.
Lucas is asking about 2 things, actually. He came to Canada and he spent 2 months studying English. Not a year, just 2 months. And does it count somehow for a punctuation? And then the other question he made is also, I'm still attending the bachelor's, doing my bachelor's degree in Brazil. Should I end it in Brazil?
No. Remember, you have to have that university degree. You cannot claim any points for an incomplete degree. You have to graduate. We have seen a lot of people say, yeah, I took a gap year and I never went back to finish. You have to graduate. You need to get that degree in order to come to Canada and add more points. Now, let's say after 3.5 years, you stop your bachelor's and you come to Canada, do a 1-year diploma, right? You cannot use this on the screen, like the combination. You will not have a master's. You will just have a 1-year diploma and the bachelor's doesn't count. You must finish your bachelor's. For you, the 2 months that you have taken for English, that's great. It doesn't really count in terms of value for immigration, but you improved your language proficiency until you're able to get a higher level.
Cool. Lucas, ele falou basicamente o seguinte: estrategicamente, seria interessante você terminar o seu bacharelado aí no Brasil, para que ele te dê você tenha o degree, e isso te dê a pontuação para que você venha aqui para o Canadá e faça, por exemplo, 1 ano de um diploma qualquer, ou pós-graduação, um diploma que quer que seja de pelo menos 1 ano, para que você tenha a pontuação equivalente ao Masters, né? Agora, o intercâmbio, o seu curso de 1 mês, 2 meses, 3 meses, assim, o intercâmbio de línguas especificamente, vamos dizer, o tempo que você estuda a língua, seja inglês ou seja francês aqui, ele, por si, ele não te dá pontuação, porque ele não te dá um degree que seja de pontos. Mas a evolução que você tem na língua, por conta disso, né, no inglês que você fez em Vancouver, certamente vai te acrescentar pontuações, porque certamente seu nível vai ser melhor e provavelmente seu IELTS, seu TOEFL, o que quer que seja, você vai ter mais pontuação em relação a isso, tá? And Lucas said he's nowadays with 19 years old, so it's pretty much the entire score coming from
many years
age.
Of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
Enjoy it, right?
Yeah, enjoy it. Yeah. Enjoy it.
Lucas, você com 19 anos, cara, você, enfim, até você tem aí mais, basicamente 10 anos com a pontuação total, então realmente você está sentado... Yeah. Você está sentado no camarote, então você tem bastante possibilidade de ter bastante pontuação. A Vera pergunta: quero estudar e trabalhar ou mudar de vida. Falou somente em português, tenho residência fixa aqui, sou pós-graduado, experiência com RH de 20 anos e 48 de idade. É difícil? Vou perguntar agora. Valeria is asking... It's kind of a consultation right now. She wants to study and work, change her life, and coming to Canada. She's 48. She's my age now. She speaks only Portuguese. He lives in Brazil. She resides in Brazil. She has post-graduation and 20 years of experience in HR. Is it difficult for her to immigrate?
To the big cities, yes. To the small provinces, no. Right? So I'm not telling you this is the only program. This is the slide that I have. So I will only use this as an example. The program in New Brunswick. Okay. So look at this. They're saying if you have 3 years of experience, if you only have upper intermediate English or upper intermediate French, right? And then you just need to score just 65 points and you can be up to, 45 or even 50. It doesn't really matter, right? But there's a specific program here I would actually like you to focus on, if you look at this table, is the second column, right? It will take you, let's say, if you go to New Brunswick and you work with CI, they put you in English courses for 6 months. 6 months is enough for you to get CLB7 in English, right? Forget French for now. So you have high school, right? You don't even have a university degree. So you work with CI, you do English for 6 months. And then after that, once you have this B2 or CLB7 in English, then they register you in a public school, in a public college, post-secondary, because you don't have a bachelor's degree. And check this out. If you are inside physically in New Brunswick, you have CLB7, so 6 months of studying English, and then you just get enrolled in a college. Okay, as in you don't even have to wait until you graduate. You get enrolled in a public college with your upper intermediate English, and you only need to have a high school degree. You're fine, right? So I will never advise you to, oh yeah, just come to Toronto. Don't. It's hard. Pick provinces like this: Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, the Atlantic provinces that everybody keeps talking about, because they really support people, and your age doesn't really matter. It's much easier for you to.
Oh, yeah.
$250, please.
There's already an assessment, right? Valéria, a questão é a seguinte: ele é um pouco mais difícil, mas não existe impedimento para o que você precisa fazer, tá? Lógico, se você quiser vir para cidades grandes como Toronto, Vancouver, etc., muito provavelmente sua trajetória vai ser mais complicada, sem dúvida nenhuma, né, pelo Express Entry. Mas existem as alternativas, como o Basso colocou aí, da questão de New Brunswick, né, da província de New Brunswick, que ela pode ser uma alternativa, porque a idade aí não seria um problema, mas certamente você precisaria se focar, já que você só tem português por enquanto, se focar na língua inglesa ou francês, ou os dois, e se matricular num college aqui no Canadá, específico no caso de New Brunswick, em New Brunswick também. Aí você teria essa possibilidade, né? O teu perfil é o típico do caso, Valéria, que é interessante você fazer uma avaliação que o Basso mencionou, né? Que essa conversa inicial estabelece o caminho. Ele deu, obviamente, um caminho aqui para você, de maneira genérica, pela rapidez que você passou. Mas provavelmente existem outros, porque tem outros programas também diferentes, não apenas em relação a esse que ele mencionou. Então, vale a pena você fazer essa avaliação de imigração que ele mencionou, né, para que ele entenda melhor o que você tem que fazer, e aí nós vamos para a língua, vamos para a college, o que for necessário para você. O Flávio, essa daqui eu acho que é a última pergunta. O Flávio Henrique pergunta o seguinte: eu tenho 38 anos, 13 anos na área industrial de uma multinacional, inglês intermediário, formado em mecatrônica, já fiz intercâmbio para Toronto. Fica muito difícil a migração? Gostaria de estudar e trabalhar. Basil, there's another like a mocking interview right now. Flavio is asking you. He has 38 years old. He is 38 years old. 13 years of experience. Intermediate English. He's an engineer in mechatronics. He has done an ESL studying, like a language studying in Toronto.
Sure.
It's just too hard to immigrate. It's kind of the same question of Valeria.
I honestly think you should be friends with Valeria, and both of them, they go and study in New Brunswick. But Valeria should be going to New Brunswick because she's going to take the second column, which is she's going to go to a public college in order for her to apply there. In his case, he's going to go through the third column, which is the strategic initiative stream, which is this one, right? The one that we talked about. Where did he go? This one. So what he should do, he should go to New Brunswick, not to learn French, not to learn English. He should learn French. So Valeria is taking 6 months of English. He's going to be taking 6 months of French. And then she goes to college and he goes to college. Or maybe actually in his case, he might even not need to go to college because he has a bachelor's degree. So here, 3 years of experience, he already has. Bachelor's degree, he already has. Under the age of 45, that's true. The only thing he's missing is upper intermediate French. He goes, studies this, and he's good to go, apply for immigration, life is good. If this does not work out for whatever reason, then he can register for a public college and then do the same thing that Valeria wants to do, which is use the public college to immigrate and apply through the New Brunswick. Again, I'm not saying New Brunswick, there's Saskatchewan, there are other places. I'm just using this as an example. Just not Toronto or Vancouver, or of course, Quebec. They're crazy.
Ok, cool. Bom, Flávio, o que ele mencionou é um pouquinho talvez diferente da Valéria. Você poderia talvez eventualmente também aproveitar o programa de New Brunswick, mas o Strategic Initiative Stream, ao invés da questão do Public College, e talvez você estudando a questão do francês também, tendo uma job offer, porque talvez pelo seu nível de inglês e pela tua experiência profissional e pela tua idade, que você ainda tem pontos nesse sentido, talvez seja interessante. O que o Bassel colocou, que eu acho que é importante, e aí vale especificamente tanto para o Flávio como para a Valéria, e talvez muitos de vocês, é que o que é super importante vocês entenderem é que existem, assim, sem brincadeira, mais de 60 programas de imigração no Canadá. O Bassel passou alguns deles, como New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, etc. Mas existem muitos outros regionais, etc., que muitas vezes pode funcionar para o perfil de vocês e ser, de repente, até mais adequado. O Bassel usou o exemplo de New Brunswick como uma forma de ilustrar possibilidades. E, basicamente, Valéria e Flávio, não é possível. Isso que é legal. É por isso que a gente traz o Bassel aqui para conversar com vocês, porque é muito raro ou é muito difícil alguém dizer, gente, não tem como. Ou, às vezes, o caminho pode ser muito complicado. Então, a melhor forma de vocês fazerem é saberem como o perfil de vocês funciona e como vocês podem transitar isso. Então, existem opções. Isso é importante vocês saberem. Legal, Lucas. Legal, Valéria. O Célio mencionou live, excelente. Estive uma presencial em Brasília, de outra escola, e não foi tão boa. Legal, Célio, obrigadíssimo. A gente quer passar informações aí para vocês. Bassel, I think we walked through all the questions already, and our time is up for a long time already as well. Would you like to leave like a final message to everyone? I think to like whatever they need to do right now.
Yes. So by attending today's webinar, you have done something very different than everybody else, which is you try to educate yourself. You try to understand what immigration is about, what moving to another country is about. The only advice I can give you is this, and I've seen this many years, doing the same thing. Don't dismiss that you're moving to another country. That means your Brazilian laws or the Brazilian ways of doing things, it's not the same. You can't apply this in Canada. Canada, the US and all that, there's a different system of doing things. You have to understand these things and then adapt yourself to it by studying and working and learning the language of this country. I'm not telling you this for immigration. Jan knows this, whenever we used to do the webinars, the seminars in his office. Even if tomorrow morning you get your permanent residency, what's going to change in your life? Nothing. You're going to get a card. You're going to get excited with it for 5 minutes, put it on social media. I don't know what you guys do nowadays. And you're going to put it down and then it's back to normal, right? Nothing changes. You still need to wake up in the morning and go to a good job and make money and do all these things. So don't run like a racehorse towards PR. There is an integration that is mandatory for you to do. And that's why, companies like CI and us, we exist, is because we help people integrate. But you have a job, which is you must learn these things. Don't dismiss them, because otherwise your life is going to be a lot more difficult after you become a permanent resident.
That's very cool. That's you hit the point, Bassel. It's pretty cool to not only pursue the PR, but pursue being integrated in Canada as well, because their lives is going to restart being a PR, not it's going to end there, right?
That is very true.
Yeah. So, pessoal, então, assim, o que o Bassel falou é uma coisa que a gente sempre fala em todos os nossos seminários, quer dizer, você conseguiu a residência permanente, o PR, ele não é o fim, ele é o começo ou um recomeço, né? Então, é extremamente importante que você entenda, logicamente, as regras que você precisa para navegar em relação à sua aquisição da sua residência permanente, é óbvio, esse é o nosso objetivo, mas que, sobretudo, você concilie essas regras também com essa adaptação, essa integração que você pode fazer no Canadá, porque a partir do momento que você pegar o seu PR card, a vida vai começar, você vai ter que ganhar dinheiro, trabalhar, enfim, você vai ter uma nova vida aqui, e a gente espera que seja, no mínimo, melhor do que a que você esteja deixando no Brasil também. O que eu só gostaria de enfatizar aqui, pessoal, é que tanto a CI como a Immigrate, o nosso objetivo é preparar e planejar bem o processo de vocês. Então, a gente gosta de fazer uma avaliação holística, ou seja, a gente quer conversar bastante com vocês, entendermos quais são os planos, como é que é o melhor para vocês, não simplesmente vomitar palavras e dizer regras para que vocês cumpram, mas acompanhar vocês do começo ao fim do processo para que isso seja bem sucedido e que todos os elementos sejam atingidos. A gente recomenda, né, o que o Bassel falou e a gente concorda sempre, planejamento e conhecimento são as chaves principais para que vocês sejam bem-sucedidos. Então, aproveitem o que a CI e a Immigrate podem fazer. Então, busquem por nós. Todas as lojas da CI no Brasil aí estão à disposição. A gente aqui na loja CI aqui do Canadá também. Então, entre em contato com a gente. Né? Agendem uma conversa com a Immigrate. Façam esse assessment, né? Agendem com a gente esse assessment, a gente vê tudo certinho e a partir disso a gente começa a planejar junto e vocês entram em 2021 já numa, vamos dizer, num planejamento já claro para isso e tudo certo. É um investimento baixo em relação à mudança de vida que vocês vão fazer, $250 canadenses, vale muito a pena, a gente tem inúmeros clientes que fizeram isso e realmente estão muito satisfeitos, então a gente conta com vocês nesse sentido, tá? Bassel, again, I thank you very much for your time. And there was a lot of information, always useful and valuable information, which is what we are expected to provide, right?
Of course.
And thank you again. And hopefully we can do this again in January because all the time there's always demand on that.
New year, hopefully it won't be the same.
Yeah, it would be better for hopefully right?
It's brand new year.
Absolutely. Pessoal, obrigadíssimo. Né? Então, entre em contato com a loja CI de vocês. Estamos à disposição. Contem com a gente em todos esses processos, em todas as etapas que vocês precisarem. E a gente espera vocês. Tá? Uma ótima quinta-feira para vocês aí. Boa noite e até mais. Tchau, pessoal.
Good night. Bye.